The moment it happened, the room closed in around me like a hand slipping over my mouth. Soft, suffocating, inescapable. I stood in the dim hallway of the old boarding house, breath fogging in the cold air, and the wardrobe at the end of the corridor seemed to breathe with me. It wasn't ornate or antique in a glamorous way. It was plain, practical, a stubborn rectangle of wood that had somehow learned to loom. The door, when it opened, revealed nothing more than darkness and a faint, damp scent, like rain that had never fallen, carrying the grave hush of a place that has forgotten how to be normal. That was the moment I knew I was alone with something that did not belong to the world I understood. I was not a curious man by nature, but curiosity has a way of sneaking up on you when you live in a place that feels haunted by the very air it holds. The boarding house had always warned me with its quiet. The walls held their breath, and the floorboards creaked to remind me that this was not a home, but a listening room for things that did not wish to be heard. My routine was simple: remain quiet, keep to myself, do not disturb the past. Yet the wardrobe seemed to be listening, counting my steps as if tallying a debt I did not know I owed. That night, I had taken to sleeping with the door ajar, because the dark was a creature with teeth, and I did not trust my own pace against it. The wardrobe sat in the adjoining room, a stubborn obstacle between comfort and the unknown. The air between us hummed with a peculiar energy, the sort that makes a single strand of hair rise on the back of your neck, the kind that tells you, in a voice you pretend you did not hear, that you are already late for something you cannot explain. I woke to a shadow. It was not a figure I could name. It did not move like a person, but glided with the assurance of something both near and far, something my own brain could not quite pin down. It did not enter the room with a bang or a scream. It arrived in a more intimate way, as if it had always been there, waiting for the exact moment when I would notice. The shadow hovered at the foot of my bed, cast by the pale light of a street lamp that filtered through a cracked window. I remember thinking that shadows, for all their invisibility, are not shy. They want to be seen and acknowledged, and so I did, with the slow, careful attention a person gives to a storm that refuses to pass. The wardrobe became the crux of what followed. It was there before any of this began, a stubborn sentinel at the boundary between the known and the unspoken. When I first moved into the house, I had not paid it much mind, only noting its plainness, the way its wood wore a patient scar of time. But after that night, the wardrobe and I entered a tacit treaty. I would not pry into what lay beyond its door, and it would not vanish from my life. It was a promise I found hard to keep, for the moment I laid my hand on the door, the air behind it shifted, as if the room itself exhaled. What followed unfolded in layers, each one thinner than the last, like pages of a diary that someone refused to throw away. I began to hear the softest, most intimate sounds whenever the wardrobe door stood slightly ajar. A whisper of fabric brushing against fabric, a breath of wind that was not wind, a whisper of footsteps that did not belong to any living being. I told myself it was the house settling, a common explanation invented after a sleepless night. I told myself that I was simply imagining, that the mind often fills emptiness with certainty when the emptiness is cold enough to bite. Yet certainty is stubborn. It arrives wearing the least dramatic clothes and tells you with the warmth of a familiar face that you are not alone, not ever again. The shadow I perceived was not a guest, but a memory. A friend I had once believed I understood, who had disappeared into the threshold of a room that no longer spoke my language. The friend, if I must name it in the way a man names the weather, had come as a shadow in the wardrobe's doorway. A rumor given form, a whisper thick as fog that refused to lift. The memory did not speak in words, but it spoke in the rhythm of a life once shared, the cadence of a presence I could almost hear breathing beside me, though no one stood there. I tried to map the sensation to something rational. The cupboard's interior, I discovered, was not simply hollow. It possessed a depth that defied my sense of scale, a recess that felt like a small universe constrained by the dimensions of a chest of drawers. When I pressed my palm against the wood, the surface grew cooler, like a glacier in a winter photograph. The touch did not elicit physical pain. Instead, it sent a prickling warmth along my arm, a signal that something or someone was registering my approach. It is ridiculous to admit, but I felt a fingerprint of time press back against me, as if the past had placed its own hand on my skin and whispered, through the cool shock of it, that I had entered a place that did not belong to the present. The memory, I realized, was not a person's memory, but a shared one, A collection of moments gathered and stored inside that wardrobe, as if the wood itself had learned to keep time in its rings. Each night, the shadow grew a little bolder, a little closer to the edge of the doorframe, until I could swear it wore the semblance of a friend's silhouette. A silhouette I had trusted not to frighten me, but to guide me. It did not speak, it could not, for it was not a voice but a presence, the form that remains when words fail. It felt like a pact made long ago, one I had unwittingly agreed to when I chose to stay within the house's slow, patient heartbeat. One evening, I found myself compelled by something beyond fear, an urge to peer into the wardrobe's depths with a gaze unflinching and patient. The memory accepted my gaze and answered not with a shout, but with a sigh, a windless draft that curled around my throat and settled in my chest. The air inside the wardrobe did not smell of dust alone. It carried a scent I could not place, a trace of a kitchen where a friend once shared soup and laughter, a trace of an autumn afternoon when laughter echoed through a yard and loosened the sleep from my eyes. It was as if the wardrobe kept a shelf of moments, and the shelf whispered when I came near. As nights collapsed into a rhythm of cold air and whispered presences, I began to notice details I had overlooked. The wardrobe's hinges, once silent, now quivered with a soft, tremulous sound when the shadow approached. The room would grow darker at the moment the shadow moved, as though the darkness itself wanted to swallow every sign that a memory had just trespassed into the present. I learned to measure time by the wardrobe's quiet breath, the slow, almost inaudible exhale that followed a shift in light or a creak of the floorboards, the instant the shadow paused at the door, as if gathering courage for what would come next. In those moments, I would remind myself that I am not a participant in a ghost tale, but a witness recounting what happened in a place that demanded an explanation. The explanation, however, did not arrive as a loud confession, but as a series of silent observations etched into the room's atmosphere. The wardrobe did not merely house a memory, it exhaled it. And the memory, in turn, exhaled me, drawing me toward a truth I was not certain I wanted to face. That the shadow had not come to haunt, but to remind. That friendship, once tethered to a shared life, can linger as a presence long after the body that bore it has faded away. The wardrobe shadow did not seek to steal or harm. It sought to relive, to curate, to preserve. I kept an inventory of sensations the way one tends to, a list of symptoms. The shadow's presence was cooler than the room's air, yet a warmth glowed near the heart whenever it drew near, a paradox I could not reconcile. The memory carried a voice that did not speak aloud, yet reached into the ear as a soft, almost affectionate murmur. It spoke of days when the two of us had wandered through the city's rain-slick streets, when we believed the world would always be ours to explore, when the future lay ahead as a map that could be unfolded with reckless joy. The voice did not boast of grandeur. It spoke of small acts of kindness that go unrecognized, of little jokes that earned a smile, of the way a friend can make even ordinary rooms feel like theaters in which memories perform for an audience of one. The setting itself, this boarding house with its peeling wallpaper, its corridor that wrapped around to the kitchen like a secret passage, its heavy wooden floors that sighed with fatigue, taught me to listen. The wardrobe, with its door ajar, became a stage where the memory rehearsed its lines, where the friend who had become shadow pressed closer to the present, not to drag me into the past, but to pull me toward a revelation. And revelation is the strangest thing to corner in the middle of a night when sleep is a fragile thing, when the mind's tendency is to rationalize rather than accept. The twist did not arrive in a sudden scream or a shocking accusation. It arrived as a quiet, almost gentle understanding that felt out of place in a story meant to frighten. The wardrobe's shadow was not a separate thing, but a facet of the narrator's own fear and longing, a reflection of a bond that cannot be severed by distance or time. My friend, if the phrase even fits the memory, had never truly left the world of this room. They were here, inside the wardrobe, not as a person, but as a presence, a constant reminder of companionship that endures beyond the body's limit. The wardrobe had kept them, and in keeping them, kept me tethered to a reality I was reluctant to abandon. I attempted to articulate this understanding with the careful language I reserve for observations of weather or architecture. But language betrayed me. Words failed to capture the weight or tenderness of a bond, stubborn enough to persist in a room that time forgot. So I paused, letting the moment stretch until the room's pipes began to hiss with steam and the radiator coughed its lazy breath. The memory reached for me a final time, not with menace, but with a soft imploration. Do not let the memory become an artifact that you lock away. Let it guide you. And I listened. In the end, I did not escape the truth by tearing the wardrobe apart or shouting the secret into the night. I did what a witness does. I allowed the memory to exist beside me, to become a part of the room's rhythm, to shape the space between fear and acceptance. The wardrobe remained, and the shadow remained with it, but their presence ceased to feel like an intrusion and began to feel almost like a promise. A miracle, if one dares to call it that, arrived not as a flash of cosmic mercy, but as a simple, quiet shift in perception. I understood why the memory clung to the wardrobe, why the world insists on keeping the past close, and why companionship can endure in even the most unlikely of places. Morning light found the room awake in a way it had not been for years. The wallpaper glowed faintly with an old, tired brightness, and the wardrobe, once an ominous presence, appeared to recede into the wall's wall, like a door left slightly ajar between rooms that should have no reason to meet. The shadow dissolved into a form that could be mistaken for a darker shade of myself, a reminder that fear is often a mirror more than a monster. If I am honest, the revelation was not about banishing darkness, but about accepting that some bonds do not fade with absence. They become a quiet, constant accompaniment, a shadow that never fully leaves but never demands to be seen as a threat. As I left the boarding house to begin the day, the memory lingered, not as a ghost or a lullaby, but as a shared truth. The wardrobe remained in its place, the shadow a patient thread woven into the fabric of the room, a reminder that friendship, even when reduced to a presence you cannot name, can still alter the course of a life. I walked away with a new understanding, that what frightens us most is not the thing we fear, but the possibility that what we loved can endure in some form beyond the body that housed it. If there is a miracle in such stories, perhaps it lies in recognizing that companionship does not always require a voice, a body, or a heartbeat. Sometimes it lingers in a doorway, a pane of wood, a breath of chill air that touches your skin and tells you that you are not as alone as you believed. The wardrobe and the shadow within did not vanish at dawn. They remained as a soft, abiding presence, a reminder that the true horror of such tales is not the fear of dying, but the fear of losing the one thing that keeps you feeling human. The memory of a friend who came like a shadow, yet refused to fade away. I never wanted my next step to be one that filled me with fear, yet the air of this room forced me to take it at every moment. In the darkness of the night, the walls of the building seemed to shrink, and the sound of my footsteps echoed as if within a hidden brick. That moment, those sparks of moments, began when I saw a blurry image of an old wardrobe, a strange mark left from the first night in the hostel, which grew blurrier with each passing day. Everything was probably a normal night. I could stop and think that this was all a usual student experience, but this place was not normal. Here, from every bruised body, from every broken window, a story emerged. And among those stories, the most frightening one was about that old wardrobe, which seemed to open slightly on its own every night. I, living alone in this room, knew that I was the one opening it, but each time it seemed to open by itself, and the cold air from inside brushed against my face. The ticking of the clock had become a strange sound in my ears. I was listening to it, but I wasn't listening to it. There was a strange thought within me that something was waiting for me to blink before revealing itself. At that time, there was also a faint sound of a drop falling in the room, which I mistook for rain, but it wasn't rain. It had become part of the rhythm of the heartbeats within. I narrowed my eyes and looked towards the wardrobe, which had just opened a little, as if signaling someone's breath. My mind suddenly recalled a strange memory. The first night I arrived here, I found an old book, a book that looked exactly like one in which someone had written the same name. It's hard to get out of here. I probably bent down without hiding a strange laugh and picked up the book. But the language of the book's pages began to seem unusual to me. Words swirled together in the air, as if they were indicating some other place. I suppressed that book and put it in the corner of the room, but as I approached the wardrobe, the same memory surfaced in my mind. The strange noise of that room, the voices coming from behind the walls, and that book, which could never be lost, never given into anyone's hand. Tonight, the wardrobe seemed eager to open again. I stopped and took a breath, so that my heartbeat would come out as my voice. With each breath, a cold breeze entered from the edge of the wardrobe and brushed against my face. That coldness gave me not a strange pleasantness, but a strange, uncomfortable restlessness, as if it were a sign that something was lost or someone had decided to lose something. I slowly took a step and stopped in front of the wardrobe. The door, which was still almost closed, rustled softly, as if something inside was speaking. At that moment, I understood without blinking that this wardrobe was not ordinary. Between the lower branches, there was an illusion of opening a window. But where was this window here? I couldn't crowd it, because everything was absolutely clear here, and yet something deep, unknown, was hidden. A hazy light slowly emerged from the edge of the wardrobe door, a light that gave a truly strange sensation. There is nothing here, and yet everything is here. I decided that I had to know the truth of this place. I bent down and wanted to look inside the wardrobe, but there was nothing straightforward inside, just darkness, cold, and that old smell that had resided here for years. A haze was rising in the air, and I understood that it was not smoke, but the sound of a memory, a voice that, without words, said that I was here, I am here, and I will be here. That voice reminded me of an old picture, a human face which was once one of the inhabitants of this place. But the next moment, it mysteriously disappeared. There was a layer of dust on the frame of the wardrobe, reminding me of the hazy lines of the past. I wanted to clean that dust with my hands, but each time my hands stopped by themselves because a sharp sound stopped me. Specifically, something below, something above, like the sound of someone taking a step. I was listening, but I wasn't speaking. I wasn't doing what is expected at every informational level. In this story, I was the only character, and the perceptions rising within me connected me with a strange inner self. Slowly I understood that the wardrobe was a door connected to the real history of this hostel, a history that the walls here used to hide, but the wardrobe would bring it forth in a blink. Behind the wardrobe was something completely dark, a strange void, as if a small cold pit was hidden inside the room. I took a cold breath, and instead of stepping back, I looked at that black pit with an unsatisfied gaze. In fact, I understood that it was the truth there, which people do not accept, that within this hostel, an event had changed everything. I slowly pulled the wardrobe handle gently. That sound, that noise, that hazy light, everything spread like smoke and then slowly, like a sigh, spread around the room. The things inside the wardrobe, which were previously hidden in darkness, now began to become slightly visible. I could see that the inner walls of the wardrobe were not of ordinary wood, but were placed on a stone floor, not like brightly colored fairies, but old, dull, lime-like surfaces. On each surface, the face of a buried story emerged. Small marks, some of which seemed corporeal, but they felt much more real than my imagination. I reached that pit, and a word, which I had sometimes heard myself saying, suddenly echoed in my ears. They were not meant to live here. The experience of that word felt like being held by a cold hand, which slowly reached my spine from my neck. I felt that the wardrobe itself was repeating its experiences, as if it wrote a new chapter every night. I remembered, according to local storytellers, there was a novel-like creation in the old stories of this hostel. A person who became a part of this place, not in someone's pictures or books, but resided in the wardrobe. Then I felt that there was a small, wound-like mystery behind the wardrobe, whose inner warmth was slowly turning cold, as if, right there, at that very moment, something was moving from inside, but I couldn't clearly perceive this movement. I saw a faint light rising from the inner edge of the wardrobe, as if someone had left a sweet spark to show that thing. With the light came a sound, but it wasn't a voice. A sound as if calling my name, but I couldn't hear it. I wasn't trying to hear it, I was experiencing it. All this pointed towards an absolute truth. There was something here that stayed with me, that wanted to speak with me, but didn't know the language. The light inside the wardrobe grew, and I could feel my heart beating faster than my own pulse. I stood amidst this fear that all this might have no consequence, that I might not just become a story. But at that very moment, I had a feeling that I could never forget in the future. I understood that this story was a real event, which had come to be told to me, an event that is alive because of this wardrobe, and that wants to happen to me, so that this place truly once becomes memorable. Suddenly, a page flew out of the wardrobe and floated upwards, as if the wind had thrown it. I went towards it, not with meaningless courage, but with a simple acceptance. The page bent before my eyes, and a date was written on it, faded, perhaps years old. A night that was considered the darkest night in the history of this hostel. I felt that I had to see this page so that this mystery could be solved. But the handwriting within the page was difficult to read, as if the lines were pulling away from me. I couldn't stop myself, nor did I want to, because every letter was bringing me closer to the reality of this place. The page that drew the most attention had a small line. "He who does not open the door, opens the door." This sentence reached the deepest part of my heart, because I understood that the wardrobe was not just a door, but a sign, a warning, a memory, a mystery that was buried within this place. I composed myself again, but there was still a strange restlessness within me. I knew I had to move forward so that the truth of its pages could come before me. Moments after the event, the wardrobe doors began to knock again. This knocking gradually intensified, as if someone's hands were pulling back the wrinkles of pages. I bravely stepped towards the door, and a strange warmth was felt on my palm, as if someone's gaze was directly on my forehead. I couldn't stop myself. I chased that sound where that voice was heard. But the voice was only until my moments of thinking, then it disappeared, as if it had never been there. Now I understood that the truth hidden behind this wardrobe is a deeply rooted story, which actually happened. Someone actually built it one day, then left it in changed circumstances. But the wardrobe tied it to its neck and kept it there, creating a strange sleeve. Now I saw that there was a small opening inside the wardrobe, a thrilling crack, which was connected to someone's demise. And if a hazy light was coming out of that crack, it meant that it was possible to get out of here. But for that, I would have to pay a price. With unsteady steps, I slowly went towards that crack. The interiors were dark, but a definite silky line of light was visible at the edge of that crack. I was wondering if this was true, if I could pass through this crack, or if this crack would pull me inside. My gaze followed that light, and a thought came to my mind. If it is true that the wardrobe is a door, then will this door show me the truth that was born, or another fear? I held my breath and looked towards the past of that crack, and then I felt that I was made for this room, for this story, and to solve the mystery of this wardrobe. Slowly the darkness of my helplessness diminished, and a wise, calm tune began to resonate in my ears. This tune was a kind of protective melody, telling me that I should not be afraid, but understand. I stood at the edge of that crack, and a voice rose within me. Next step, right step. I took a breath and looked inside the crack. Nothing was visible there, but a faint, hazy light slowly made everything clear. At that very moment, I felt that the truth behind the wardrobe was not just a physical place, but a memory, which was made here not for anyone, but to be heard by me. The moments felt like hours, but time was passing haltingly like a thin sound. I continued to estimate the scene inside the crack, taking one step at a time, and then, suddenly, a subtle change occurred. It gave me a special signal, as if I was not the hero of that story, but its final fountain pen. At that moment, my heart deeply felt that I was not alone. An old memory was holding my breaths in its pores, pulling me towards it. I was trying to keep myself in control because I now understood that this was not courage, but a compulsion. Day by day, a new part of the wardrobe's mystery unfolded. I used to think that every time I went near the door, that door would shrink by itself, because it knew that I would open it. But I didn't want to open it. Amidst the sound of the room and that strange smell, I was slowly reading it. I learned that the wardrobe is a messenger, a testimony to a real event that remained buried in the history of this hostel. This story, which is now settled deep within me, makes me stand near that wardrobe every night, so that by touching it, by listening to it, by understanding it, I can accept the truth of this place. With time, I understood that the dignity and fear of this mystery go hand in hand. Between the walls of the wardrobe, I kept hearing a voice that says, all this was like a wish, a desire that belonged to the owner of this hostel and which bound him so deeply. I also came to know that, with time, every event that might have once happened in this room has now taken a form, a cold, slow light, a dense, hazy terror, and a strange place where everything is possible, but nothing is clear. I went to the wardrobe again, and nothing was normal here. In the dust below, a small piece of paper was visible, trembling slightly with the rustling wind. I took a breath a moment late before picking it up, as if I was solving a great dilemma. The small letters written on the paper were clear, yet they were also vague, as if someone had written something by mistake. While reading, I felt that this was the document that the past of this hostel had preserved. It read, "He who stays here becomes a witness to this place, but if he wants to run away, he still cannot run away. The wardrobe stops him." This sentence settled within me as a heavy truth. I stopped for a moment, then took a cold, deep breath and told myself that this story was not over. It might just be beginning. My heart beat faster, but my body told me that I should remain calm so that I could believe this story to be true, not a scare. Because the truth was this: this place had chosen me, and I had to accept that I too was now a part of this event. Behind the wardrobe, another crack appeared on the wall, a sign that told me what could happen next. I slowly took steps, as if I was walking on an open road with an unknown traveler, and then suddenly, the light of the room changed into a faint glow. This glow was so clear that I felt as if someone had left their inner world box-like open there. I felt that all this was a real event, an event in which I was not alone, but a part. The distance behind the door was so small that I couldn't leave it. At every 1,000th step, I heard a sound. Someone's breath, someone's small prick, like a strange sound of nature. But the voice would get lost and then come back again. This sequence continued, and I understood that the wardrobe was never just a wooden object, but a living being, a memory, a warning, an action that, by connecting with my life, now makes me stand here. Finally, at some moment of that night, I felt that I had become an essential element for that story, as if I had to open that door or keep it closed. I was trying to keep it closed, but once the door opened and the darkness turned sideways and entered inside. But I was watching not with fear, but with a strange satisfaction. I knew that this door was a sign, a mark, a truth that would never break within this hostel. It was true that understanding is more important than fear. And then suddenly, the light diminished, and peace returned to the room. Behind the wardrobe, which was now slowly quiet, an eternal truth was assessed, that this place, this hostel, this wardrobe, and this story are all connected to each other. If I leave it, perhaps everything will get lost again, becoming another blurry memory. But if I accept it, then I can give a new meaning to this place. I understood that real fear is not just darkness, but the courage to see the truths hidden behind the darkness. I finally didn't let myself rest. I preserved these moments like a record that I can listen to from time to time. This story, this wardrobe, this hostel, everything is a truth, and that truth shakes me to the core. As the night passed, I realized that I had gone with a truth and was returning with a truth, that sometimes the most terrifying events in life are within, and they become true when we start accepting them. If I want, every sound of this room, like a sound, like a breath, the rustling of the window, will one day become a credible story. But for today, once again I gather myself, moving away from that wardrobe, and in the peace of the night, I create a new construction, a memory which has become history, and will continue to deepen every page of this hostel without changing in the future too.